I'm Tate Galloway. I am a program manager with the City of San Diego's Planning Department. I am your new chair, so greetings. That's what happens when you miss a meeting. You end up getting appointed as chair. So certainly happy to do it. We're going to go ahead and bring the meeting to order. Just want to make sure that Sandag staff, have you started recording the meeting?
Yes.
All right, great. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. Again, I'm Tate Galloway. I'm your chair, City of San Diego. We'll go ahead and just do, for the good of the order, just a quick round of introductions. I'll go ahead and if you can just turn it over, and then after you just do a quick introduction, if you just want to go ahead and just popcorn that to the next person on down so we can go through introductions quickly. Turn it over to Rob Eford.
Thanks, Tate. Rob Eford, Program Manager, Long Range Planning at County of San Diego.
Greetings. Let's go ahead and we'll just send it over to Jenny Russo. Well, I'm sorry, San Diego staff. I'll go ahead and get staff. Apologize. Let me get the members first. Noah from City of Lemon Grove.
Hi there, Noah Alvey, City of Lemon Grove Community Development Manager. Thanks.
Joe, City of San Marcos.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Joe Ferracci, City of San Marcos Planning Manager.
Jennifer Gates, City of Escondido.
Jennifer Gates, City of Encinitas, Planning Manager, Policy and Housing.
Apologies about that. You're
No worries.
cut off. I was guessing a little bit. Jeff Murphy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Murphy, Community Development Director.
Jeff, good to see you.
You too.
And I apologize, I don't see everybody's names or cities, so I'm just going to go ahead and Tony.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tony Shute, City of El Cajon, Director of Community Development.
And Nikki.
Sorry, I'm Nikki. I'm with Sandag, and I'm a planner, a regional planner here.
All right. And before I go on, thanks. Before I go on to the rest of staff, are there any members of the TWIG that I have not done introductions? Dave, sorry, didn't see you.
It's okay. Hey, everyone. Dave DeVries, City of Poway, City Planner, and your Vice Chair.
Tiffany, City of Chula Vista.
Hello, Tiffany Allen, City of Chula Vista Development Services Director.
Joseph.
Yes, Joe Lim, City of Solana Beach, Community Development Director.
Chris.
Chris Jacobs, City of Santee, Principal Planner. Thank you.
Adam.
Adam Feinstone, City of Escondido, Interim Director of Community Development.
Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph Smith, Planning Director, City of Del Mar.
Megan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Megan Openshaw, City of Imperial Beach, Senior Planner.
And Jesse Brown.
Hello, Jesse Brown, City of Coronado, Senior Planner.
John.
Thanks, John Conley, City of Vista.
And I believe I got everybody. I think Adam, I got you. Jesse, already got you. Your hands are up. All right, why don't we go ahead? Is there any other members of the TWIG that haven't had a chance? Jeff, to do introductions. Hunt.
Good afternoon. Jeff Hunt, City Planner for Oceanside.
Welcome. Okay, why don't we go ahead? Allison, if you want to do introductions, and then if you could just pass it on to each staff person, they can do introductions quickly.
Sure. Hi, Allison Wood, Senior Planner at Sandag. And I'll pass it over to Sam Solis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Solis. I'm a regional planner here at Sandag.
I'll just call on our staff. So we have Sam Sanford.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sam Sanford, Senior Planner with the Long Range Planning Division.
We have Jenny Russo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Russo. I'm the Grants Program Manager here at Sandag.
and Eva Sanchez.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Sanchez, planner at Sandag.
And we already heard from Nikki, but Nikki can say hello.
Hi, again, I'm Nikki Zanchetta, and I'm a regional planner at Sandag.
All right. Great. Well, let's move on to item 2, public comments. Allison, are there any members of the public who want to speak? And I just say, if there's anybody out there, this is the opportunity for the public to make comments on non-agenda public comment items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody in the public who'd like to make comments? Members of the public will have 3 minutes to speak per issue.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, great. Moving on. Do we have any communications from either the TWIG members or Sandag staff that anybody would like to report out on non-agenda comments or communications? Not seeing any hands, we'll move on. Approval of meeting minutes. I'm going to ask for the approval of the October 12th meeting minutes. I'd like to have a motion if somebody could make that to approve the October 12th meeting minutes.
So moved. Carlsbad.
Jeff Murphy, Carlsbad made the motion. Can I have a second?
I'll make
Second. Oh. John can do it.
Second, please. Thank you.
Second from John Connolly. Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Can I see either what's a raise of hands to approve the minutes for October 12th?
I think just for the record, Tate, I need to do the roll call vote. I'll go down the list. We can do this pretty quickly. So City of Carlsbad, Jeff Murphy.
Aye.
City of Chula Vista, Tiffany Allen.
Aye.
City of Coronado, Jesse Brown.
Aye.
County of San Diego, Rob Eford.
Aye.
City of Del Mar, Joseph Smith.
Aye.
City of El Cajon, Tony Shute.
Aye.
City of Encinitas, Jennifer Gates.
Aye.
City of Escondido, Adam Feinstone.
Aye.
City of Imperial Beach, Megan Openshaw.
Aye.
City of La Mesa is absent. City of Lemon Grove, Noah Alvey.
Aye.
City of National City is absent. City of Oceanside, Jeff Hunt.
Aye.
City of Poway, Dave DeVries.
Aye.
City of San Diego, Tate Galloway.
Yes.
City of San Marcos, Joe Parachi.
Aye.
City of Santee, Chris Jacobs.
Aye.
City of Solana Beach, Joseph Lim.
Bill Lim, aye.
And City of Vista, John Conley.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously with all the members that are present.
Great. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 4. This is going to be a report. The Housing Acceleration Program and Transnet Smart Growth Incentive Program call for projects. And on this one, Sandag staff, Allison, can you remind me who's going to be presenting this one?
Yeah, so Sam Solis will be giving the presentation today.
All right, Sam, take it away.
Good afternoon, TWIG members. My name is Samuel Solis. I am a regional planner here at Sandag, and it is my pleasure to be here today. Today, I will be providing a quick overview of Sandag's new funding opportunities for our local jurisdictions. At our last TWIG meeting, we mentioned that we would be taking the call for projects for recommendation to our policy advisory committees. Just last week at the Regional Planning Committee and today at the Transnet Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, sorry, that's a mouthful, recommended to release the call for projects to the Sandag Board of Directors. So that will be going to the Sandag Board on November 19th of the 2021, sorry. Next slide, please. A component of the Regional Housing Incentive Program is to provide grant opportunities for our local jurisdictions. In this case, we have a new housing acceleration program using regional early action planning grant funds we received from the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Transnet Smart Growth Incentive Program. And the reason we are releasing them together is that they are complementary and together can support our regional goals to accelerate the production of housing, but also achieve our climate goals. As you can see on screen, each grant is at $3 million, and it puts money in the hands of our local jurisdictions to allow for planning at all levels to achieve our regional goals. Next slide, please. Jumping to the criteria for the Housing Acceleration Program, here on screen, you can see the eligibility and scoring criteria that will be used. Minimum eligibility includes projects that are within the smart growth areas, cities with a climate action plan or working towards the development of a climate action plan, and at least one pro-housing policy in place. For the scoring criteria, we have the points spread across the categories seen here on screen, with the highest points allocated towards furthering mobility hubs, pro-housing planning, and equity. Next slide, please. Pro-housing activities might be a new concept for some of our applicants, even the jurisdictions. HCD has developed pro-housing designation program that provides incentives to cities and counties to adopt pro-housing policies and practices to become eligible to compete for housing, community development, and infrastructure program funding. The categories seen here include some of the activities jurisdictions will need to demonstrate to show their approach to pro-housing policies. Next slide, please. In an effort to streamline the application process, our team has simplified the criteria for the Smart Growth Incentive Program. The eligibility is very similar to that of the Housing Acceleration Program, with the exception of no pro-housing policy being needed. And similarly, there's an emphasis on smart growth planning, furthering mobility hubs, and equity. I'd like now to turn it over to my colleague Eva to talk to you more about mobility hubs.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eva Sanchez. I'm a planner with Sandag working in the Mobility Hubs division, where I support the development of mobility hub planning resources like the Regional Mobility Hub Strategy, and also support stakeholders in implementing mobility hub elements and pilots. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways in which cities can begin to start incorporating mobility hubs into local planning efforts. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the mobility hub concept, but I'll just provide a quick refresher. Mobility hubs are places where you make connections. They aren't just transit centers, but they're really more like whole communities. And it's where different travel options like walking, biking, transit, and shared mobility all come together while offering amenities and technologies that get people where they need to go more seamlessly. And we like to say mobility hubs are areas where you live, work, and play because they typically work best in areas with a mix of jobs and housing and shopping and dining and a bunch of local activities. And so all of these components that make up a mobility hub work together to reduce the need to drive a car, resulting in less vehicle miles traveled in GHG, which is why Sandag envisions mobility hubs as a key strategy in meeting our regional goals. And so far, our role as a regional planning agency has been to develop technical support and resources like the Mobility Hub Strategy, which is a toolbox that can guide cities in mobility hub planning and implementation. But it's the local cities that have the tools to incorporate mobility hub concepts through local plans and policies. And while we've been planning for mobility hubs more at the regional scale, I think mobility hubs can take many shapes and sizes and provide different offerings. So planning for mobility hubs at the local level really provides an opportunity to tailor the mobility hub concept to meet the needs of your communities. Next slide, please. So starting with complete streets, mobility hubs envision having safe spaces for people to walk, bike, and take newer forms of mobility like shared e-bikes or scooters. And this is important not only on local streets within mobility hubs, but also on major corridors that connect to other mobility hubs. And so I think one way to plan for this could be by integrating complete streets improvements into your local planning documents, or even developing complete streets policies that consider emerging mobility options like bike share and scooter share, neighborhood electric vehicles, last mile delivery vehicles, or even vehicles that we're not even aware of yet. But point here is to just think beyond bikes and walking when thinking about complete streets. Next slide. Parking management strategies are also important tools in mobility hub planning. Cities can evaluate local regulations and municipal codes to ensure that they enabled the mobility hub concept, including parking management strategies. So for example, municipal codes can be amended to reduce or even eliminate parking development standards in areas near transit, which can reduce development costs, allow for more space for affordable housing, and all while encouraging people to take transit. And then cities can complement parking standard policies by allowing shared parking policies into municipal codes to make the most out of existing parking spaces and reduce the need to build more parking. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, mobility hubs are places where many different travel options come together, and many of these options will need access to the curb, which is going to make the curb prime real estate in mobility hubs. And so curb space could be used for things like pickup and drop-offs, deliveries, places to park your bikes or scooters. And so what cities can do is develop frameworks for how curb space is used and prioritized based on the unique land use and context to determine the best use of this limited space. So cities, for example, could prioritize active modes of transportation like personal bikes or shared mobility, so bike share and scooter share, to encourage and support more active and sustainable options. And then these frameworks for how we prioritize the curb can be integrated into city policies to ensure equitable access, curb access on local streets. Next slide, please. City right-of-way permitting processes is another tool that cities can leverage to incorporate mobility hub elements. So some cities already have permitting programs that allow for mobility hub elements in the right-of-way. So as an example, permits that allow parklets, shared mobility device operations, permits for EV charging. So cities have the opportunity to evaluate potential new permit programs that allow or even require mobility hub supportive features, such as the ones shown on this slide, or it's an opportunity to update existing permits to include language that's supportive of mobility hubs. Next slide, please. And then cities might also consider integrating mobility hub features into land and building development codes to incentivize or even require developers to incorporate mobility hub supportive features as part of their proposed projects. These amenities could include things like secure bike parking or designated parking corrals for shared mobility, wayfinding, and much more. And these types of amenities could also be required of employers as well, also referred to as trip reduction ordinances or sometimes known as TDM ordinances. But these are all elements that are really key to making the mobility hub more seamless and convenient for residents, employees, or visitors to get around without needing a car. Next slide, please. So that concludes my slides for today, but those were just a handful of ways that mobility hubs can be integrated into the local planning process. But we have more information on the Regional Mobility Hub strategy and a number of different resources like the Mobility Hub features catalog available on sdforward.com, Regional Mobility Hub. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Eva, for that presentation. I did have just a couple questions that I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the committee just to ask questions. You had mentioned there's some resources. Can you briefly describe what those resources are and where they are?
For the Mobility Hub?
Correct.
Yeah, so the Regional Mobility Hub strategy is available on sdforward.com, Regional Mobility Hub. So that's where you can find the strategy. There's a features catalog that is essentially a toolbox of different elements that make up a mobility hub. There's also an implementation considerations document that provides guidance on what cities or developers can do to implement mobility hub concepts. So that's all available on sdforward.com.
Great. I'd asked staff if you have time after this meeting, or you can put in the chat, maybe actually as a separate email, if you could just email that to the members of the committee, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and just open it up to questions. If I could just see hands for anybody who would like to ask any additional questions of staff on this item. All right, I'm not seeing any questions of staff at this time. All right, well, great. Thank you so much, staff. Appreciate the presentation. And I just encourage any members that may have questions just to follow up with Sam or Eva directly if they have questions, if that's okay with you, staff.
Chair, before we move forward, can I make one final comment?
Sure.
I would just like to make note that the Call for Projects will be hosting a workshop on December 7th, and we will send more information regarding that in the email that goes out.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation again.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item, sorry, just before we move on, I forgot to ask, are there any public comments?
I don't see any hands raised.
And just for the record, was there any members of the committee that joined on after we did roll call?
Yes.
Yes, David Welch with National City.
Great. Okay, just want to make sure that you are counted as being present here. All right. Item number 5, our discussion of Senate Bill 9 and Senate Bill 10. This is just a discussion with the TWG members to share information as to what each of our jurisdictions are doing to address those bills. We're going to go ahead, just some maybe possible discussion items. Has your jurisdiction taken any step in response to these new laws? For instance, my understanding from Jeff at Carlsbad that you're working on an info bulletin and a checklist. And then also, are there any resources that you found valuable in putting any information together as you prepare for, at the very least, SB 9 and maybe perhaps what jurisdictions are thinking if they're going to implement SB 10 at all? So I will turn it over to the members of the committee. Anybody would like to share? Jeff, thank you.
No problem. My hand down. So you're right. We are in the process of putting together an information bulletin. For those that don't know, City of San Diego has a pretty good library of different information bulletins, which are designed to kind of explain cases like this, new laws that come into place, or provide additional information or detail in code sections that are a little vague. And so stole the idea and made it better, in my opinion. But so we're putting together an info bulletin similar to what we did with SB 330 and SB 35 that kind of just walks an applicant through what's the eligibility, what's the process to submit, what is the review or the permitting requirements that are tied to these projects. And so we're pretty close to having a draft complete. There's still some outstanding questions that we have. I think a lot of us have that we're kind of waiting for HCD to come out with their fact sheet, which is anticipated, I guess, later in December. But for coastal cities like us, there's a number of questions relative to the Coastal Act and to what extent these provisions are not applicable in the coastal zone. Because there is, as you guys know, there is that provision in the bill that says that, you know, basically there's no any properties, or it doesn't, the intent of SB 9 is not to diminish or reduce the enforceability of the Coastal Act. But as you know, one of the big things is Coastal Commission has you know, made it very clear that short-term vacation rentals are allowed in the coastal zone. But SB 9 specifically says you can't have those. So the question is, there's a conflict there. Which one, what parent wins there? So those are some questions that we still have outstanding, but for the most part, the structure of our info bulletin, we developed a supplemental checklist that an applicant will have to fill out to show that they're eligible before filing an application. And then we're working internally in terms of making the process ministerial. Most of our processes are largely ministerial already, particularly with minor subs. So that there's not going to be a change there. But with coastal development permits, we're going to handle them kind of what we do with ADUs, where we still require a CDP, but it's approved ministerially by the city planner. It still gets noticed and it's still appealable to the Coastal Commission, which we had our first appeal on an ADU last month. So we're going to see how that's going to play out. So other than that, like I said, I think we're queued up, assuming we get our questions answered by HCD in December. I think we'll be queued up to have our documents out on the streets by January 1.
Great, thank you for sharing. Just out of curiosity, how are you treating design-related issues in terms of setbacks, building heights?
So that's one of the questions we have, and hopefully HCD will respond with some guidance. Because if you read SB 9, it says that jurisdictions can apply objective design standards. So your height, setback, those are all objective that you can apply. It says that we have to waive it if the applicant can show that they can't build, I think, 2 units of 800 square foot or less. And then it goes on to say that the jurisdictions may do these other provisions. They may require a 4-foot setback. They may require, I forget what the other, they may require 1 parking stall. So one interpretation is, since it's may, we can choose not to do that. So we can apply these subjectives, the objective design standards, so long as they're able to develop 2 units of at least 800 square feet.
Thank you. Joseph Smith.
Yeah, hey there. So with SB 9, we've had a lot of conversations, just like I'm sure many of you have with your folks. We brought an item to council, talked to them at length about these 2 bills, plus I think everybody's aware of some of the other big ones that I just wanted to flag. It's Assembly Bill 491. That's the corridor requiring affordable units throughout projects. And there's also AB 1398, which is the housing element penalty, which we should probably put on a future agenda and talk about for 6th cycle. Anyway, with respect to SB 8, the way that we've looked at it, the entire city of Del Mar is in the coastal zone. We've learned a lot through the ADU process. And our position, we've talked to Coastal about this as well on HCD, is that we're not implementing SB 9 day one because we need to get through the LCPA process. There's too many environmental constraints in our LCP and overlays and things that we need to sort out with the Coastal Commission first before we can really start assessing lot splits and additional housing units on site. So that's what we're doing. We are moving ahead with looking at doing a local ordinance, LCPA, and getting that to Coastal Commission as soon as we can. And then just in terms of all these questions, Jeff, you asked a lot of we're also asking a lot of questions. I think that the way that we've been just applying this generally, it reminds me a little bit, it is definitely the ADU concept when it comes to administrative CDPs and the way that that process works. And that's what we're doing as well in Del Mar. We did have an ADU appealed as well to the Coastal Commission. And that's, I think, might be going here at the end of the year. But with respect to all of our development standards, which are objective, we don't have any objective design standards, but we do have, of course, objective development standards. It seems really impossible to be able to comply with SB9 and maintain all those, including minimum lot width and depths. All that seems like it's been busted pretty hard to be able to make, to be able to find conformance with SB9. If we're going down to 1,200 square foot lots, 4-foot setbacks and so forth. So there, we're going to design, we're talking about how to structure this, but it may be a section of our code that reads more like an overlay, or it's a separate chapter. Instead of going through and amending all of our zoning for compliance, we just have an SB9 compliance section for projects that are triggered, and then that would talk about, overrides consistent with the law. And it reminds me a little bit, I was going to share this with the group, it reminds me a little bit of under density bonus law when you get into waivers. So like to make a project fit, there are things that need to bust when it comes to objective designs or development standards. And, including like lot area, for example, minimum lot area would be a good one. So that's where we're at. And then the second piece has to do with what about projects that go beyond 800 square feet? So we know that we have to allow for 2 800 square foot footprints, if you think of it that way. What if somebody has a 2,000 square foot footprint they want to put in? And so our application is, I think we're going to follow what we do for ADUs, and that's, you can still request it, but that piece goes through discretionary review. You can have the 800 square feet, we can facilitate that, but anything beyond that needs to go through a standard design review process. And it's an ask on top of the SB9 project, so.
Muted, Tate.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate the comment about needing to go to coastal and having to put this off. We have a number of items that are stacking up at coastal, so definitely staff there is quite busy working on things. So that certainly is resonates with us at the City of San Diego as well. So thanks for sharing that. Speaking with any questions, I guess, before we move on for Joseph? Seth, I see your hand up. Seth with the City of San Diego.
Thanks, Tate. I appreciate it. I just wanted to briefly give an overview of the City of San Diego's approach to SB9, and eventually we will have an information bulletin. So I've got a note here to check out Carlsbad's bulletins to see the improvements that have been made. But one of the things that we're focusing on as we're coming up with our SB9 requirements is the interaction between SB9 and the ADU ordinance. And I'm curious, and Joseph, you alluded to this a little bit, but I'm curious if any other jurisdictions are trying to align these in a way that really gives the property owner kind of a clear option to go with ADUs or to go with SB9 units. And are there some drawbacks that you're seeing to doing that? Because what we don't want to do is encourage or allow for two programs that have wildly different requirements. I mean, it's hard to kind of justify that on a policy basis when you're really doing a very similar thing of allowing additional units in a single family zone. So I'm just curious if any of the TWIG members have or are looking into this or have any insight into a comparison between how you're allowing for ADUs and how you're planning on allowing for SB9.
Any interested takers on that would like to share? Any thoughts on that sort of issue that you're facing?
Yeah, Tate, I'll just share, Seth, since I was just talking about this. There is a lot of overlap between the ADU components in our LCPA and as well as the SB9, how we're developing it. It reads a little bit like, I think the ADU provisions are a little more king over SB9. You know, for example, the whole thing with HOAs and CCRs, the ADU statute overrides those things, but SB9 is pretty clear it doesn't. So there are some distinguishing pieces between the two. And, you know, I think generally the case that I'm finding more so has to do with a property that developed an ADU under current statute and now wants to split that ADU off on a separate lot. So that ADU now becomes a home. And SB9 is written clearly that, you know, we can't require any type of conformance rule to that unit. So that unit it could be on the property line. You know, it doesn't even meet the 4-foot standards, right? So it's these types of situations. So I think they do work together to that degree, but at the end of the day, it seems like ADUs still control and have a little bit more power maybe than SB9 type projects, but we are trying to design them similarly. I'm hoping that the state does clarify some of this stuff because it's just becoming super complicated just trying to track how this is all going to play out in the next 5 years for all of us.
Absolutely agree. Thanks, Joseph.
Adam, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so we've been looking at this and we're actually in the middle of a code amendment, well, at least drafting the language for it. We've been of the impression that we have to allow at least 800 square feet, but can't limit it to that. Sounds like others are going in a different direction. But I think the one thing that that makes it a little bit, I guess, helpful if we do allow more is it gives someone an incentive to do this versus an ADU, which we would be able to collect impact fees for. So that's something that in our jurisdiction here in Escondido, we kind of are looking to that as a kind of saving grace, I guess, a silver lining, I guess I would say, on a SB9 duplex versus an ADU. But yeah, we're working that code amendment through and hopefully going to bring something forward towards the end of the year to Planning Commission and early next year to Council. One question I have, I don't know if anyone in the group is seeing this or doing this, but I've heard some people are, maybe not San Diego, some people are looking at bringing urgency ordinances to their council so they give themselves a little more time to get something formal and truly codified in front of them. I don't know if anyone's got any knowledge or input on that.
Anybody aware of emergency ordinance?
I haven't heard about an urgency ordinance. I have heard about this idea of an MOU that's been floated around to the jurisdiction saying that they should adopt it, making commitments. But the question is, we had our city attorney look at it, and as we can review more, it was these commitments were inconsistent and contrary to what was actually authorized under SB9. So I'm not sure what the value is, but I know that there was a group of organizations that were kind of floating around, going to different jurisdictions, kind of encouraging city councils to adopt this MOU thing. But that's the only thing I've heard.
Has anybody heard from any applicants that are kind of lining up and waiting for when this goes into effect?
Oh God, yes.
While the door is open, might as well take advantage of it. Anybody else would like to share? Jeff, I saw your hand up, and then David.
Thanks. Again, this is Jeff Hunt, City of Oceanside. similar to some of the other cities, we sent a pass-through memo to our council, just informing them of the key elements of the two bills. And we also offered some interpretations. I'll start with, we actually have agricultural zone land in our city, and we're taking the interpretation that this SB 9 does not apply to ag land because of there's a provision in there that says it speaks to single-family residential zoned lands. We also believe that we can apply a 4-foot setback, even if it denies the 800 square foot, but beyond that we cannot. And we realize that's open to interpretation. So I'll look forward to some guidelines or guidance from the state as well. But at this point, that's our take on that one. And then finally, we believe we can deny a lot split based on the provision that we can require access to a public right-of-way if that access doesn't meet our objective standards, which is generally 16 feet wide. So if there's an existing house and it's only got a 15-foot setback and they want to put a house behind it and split it, we feel we could deny that. So there are some provisions where it's not going to be automatic. Likewise, we're in the coastal zone and we're going to implement it in the coastal zone without any LCPA because we believe it's a state law, though we won't require any public hearings similar to the ADUs. We'll just do it ministerially, send out notice, though the notice is awkward because they really can't appeal it to us. So, or to our council or anything like that. In terms of the ADUs, we see some similarities, but for us, particularly, it's not that much different because our city decided to prohibit short-term rentals of our ADUs. And so in that regard, SB 9 is somewhat similar to the ADUs. We do think that the SB 9 will allow a bigger home on bigger lots if the lot allows it. The ADUs have the maximum size. I believe it's either 50% or if it's detached, 1,200 square feet or something to that extent. Anyways, our take is that the SB 9 doesn't have that limit other than the objective zoning standards, which if you had a large lot, kind of an estate lot, some of our larger single family zones, you could get a pretty big second unit per SB 9. So that's kind of a summary for Oceanside.
Thanks, Jeff. David?
Yeah, hi, everyone. So for City of Poway, I'd say we're prepping for a bulletin for January 1st, and then hoping to take a draft ordinance in the second meeting in January. I did attend the ILG webinar. It was good. They're going to send out some resources. My understanding is, I think Sandag team was part of that webinar, and they'll email those resources to the group once they get them. HCD, well, the word on the street there was that HCD is going to send out their guidance documents in February of next year. So we'll see when they come out with all of that. And then one of my planners sent me some information on the city of Santa Barbara, took an agenda report to their planning commission. And I thought their presentation was really helpful. If you want kind of an overview or a sample for what you're working on, I sent that over to Allison to send to the group as well. That's it for Poway.
Yeah, and if I could just add quickly, Dave, we'll send out that resource from Santa Barbara. Members of our team have also gathered a few other resources from other cities, Pasadena, San Jose, Calabasas. So we'll continue to gather resources, and anything that you come across, feel free to send it our way and we'll distribute that out to the group.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you for doing that, Allison. Joseph?
Yeah, the city of Solana Beach, we're actually taking up a draft ordinance for council consideration this evening. Predominantly follows the state law. There's a few items in there that we have that we believe are objective standards that outline under what circumstances they can be allowed, both for the urban lot split as well as the 2 units on a lot. We are going to be requiring at least 1 parking space per unit. Because our city is entirely within the coastal zone, we think that we have standing as it relates to not taking up public parking by at least having 1 space on site for that. What other provisions? We have some height restrictions and size restrictions as well that are going to be considered by council this evening.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thank you. John.
Thanks, Tate. I guess it's kind of interesting to see that every city has some type of different interpretation or idea about how this is going to be implemented, which makes it all the more awful. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not representing Vista there, but I think most of my council would agree. We're also preparing objective standards, and we have an ordinance coming. It'll probably be after the first of the year. I'm interested in any cities that are willing to share this, anything that they've put forward. If maybe Allison, you could help be the collector of that, or if there's any samples that anybody wants to provide in terms of objective standards. And I think we have the same issue for ADUs and questions about HOAs and CCNRs and all kinds of ambiguity in the state law. So we're hoping that the HCD guidance in February answers some of those questions. But if you get any clarification before then, I'd be interested in hearing from Sandag on that issue. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great suggestion, John. Thank you. Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer Gates, Encinitas. So we are going to council next week with an informational item on SB9, and I'll be presenting kind of the highlights and then also a lot of the things that we're talking about that are up for interpretation. And, with special counsel's guidance, then we will get city council's guidance on how we want to move forward with an ordinance. And we also, since we're in the coastal zone, how we are going to work with coastal, especially with the lot splits, but also with, the allowance now of 4 units on a lot and things like that. So whether or not to include ADUs as part of that, or is it one or the other, there's a lot of open-ended aspects of this law. So that's it for right now, and more to come. But I second what everybody else is saying, is just to share as much as we can about what each other are doing and how we're approaching this, because I think HCD's guidance is always a little late. So we're always kind of trying to catch up again. So thank you.
Yeah, I was feeling that HCD is looking to a few others to put things out there and they react to it for better or for worse, but I agree with you on that one wholeheartedly. Any other comments from the members? Not seeing any. I think it's been a great discussion. I would echo those recommendations made by John, Jennifer, and others to if Allison, if the staff could collect that information, and I would even, if possible, go a step further and maybe perhaps there is a cheat sheet in terms of looking at, setbacks, lot sizes, or any sort of minimums in terms of how people are handling the various issues. So it gives us maybe a place to make some comparisons, especially for those jurisdictions who might be doing this a little bit later after January 1st. And so we have some more information to work from as that gets available. And especially if you see, again, depending on your availability and to resources to do this, if you see any other jurisdictions within the state of similar characteristics to the San Diego region, that would be helpful as well. Just I think so we have some point of comparison. I do think, you know, this is my own personal feeling on this, is that I think this is if it's done right, I think it could be a great opportunity to really start providing middle income housing. Obviously, there are devils in the details on this one, and I'm certainly concerned on those issues in terms of not wanting to create many McMansions on large estates or large lots. I think that's kind of contrary, I think, to what the intent of this law was, for better or for worse. So we are going to have, just kind of skipping ahead, we're in our January meeting, we're going to have another agenda item to continue talking about SB 9, SB 10. We'll have some more information, and I just asked Allison if you could share that information a few days ahead, if it's available, so we have a chance to look at that and then inform our discussion some more. So great, thanks everybody. Are there any comments from members of the public that wish to address this item?
No hands raised.
All right, great. Let's move on to item 6. It's the FAST Act Performance Management Safety Targets. And we have Sandag staff who is going to be presenting this item. It's Sam Stanford. Sam? Let me just mention, Sam will be reporting on data collected in target setting efforts related to fatalities and serious injuries on public roads.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, working group members. So it's been nice seeing a couple of familiar faces, but it's been an entire year since I've been before this group. But despite that time gap, I'm kind of hoping that this item looks familiar to a few of you at least. This is the 5th iteration of annual safety target setting under this federal requirement. And today's presentation is a little bit of a teaser. So as schedules didn't quite allow for all the data gathering and crunching with the working group agendas. So we want to include this group and provide all the information that we can at today's meeting. And then we're going to encourage you to coordinate with your public works directors and or your city engineers. We'll be going to those working groups at the end of next week with additional information. And so I'll work with Allison to also provide additional information to send out via email to members of this group as that becomes available. So this is the safety targets following the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. As one of the surface transportation bills that enacted these requirements. As I mentioned, we're on our 5th iteration. Just a little bit of background on it. The way the function of setting targets works is that first it starts with the State Department of Transportation, the Caltrans. They set annual targets and they're required to set those by August 31st of every year. For Caltrans efforts for this round, they used a trend-based approach to set the 2022 targets. And then after the state DOT develops their targets, the MPO, Sandag, has 180 days to develop either regional targets or support the statewide targets. Those are the two options that MPOs have. And for the past 4 target setting processes, the Sandag Board of Directors has elected to approve supporting the Caltrans targets. It's kind of been the way we've moved forward at these past iterations. So the 5 measures themselves are up on the slide right now. We look at and I should state that these are based on data collected on all public roads, just regardless of ownership or functional classification. It's all the roads that are accessible to the public. And then the processes for how to calculate the measures and the targets, or the measures I should say, are all part of the rulemaking process. But the 5 measures are the number of fatalities, followed by the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, and then the rate of serious injuries. And then the 5th one is a combined measure that really looks at the vulnerable users of our roadways. So this is the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So your cyclists, your pedestrians are included in that group. So as I mentioned, Caltrans has already set the state targets. So on this table here, on the far left-hand side, you see the same 5 performance measures. In the center column is the numeric target that Caltrans has set for calendar year 2022. This is based on a 5-year rolling average. That's why you do see a few decimal points on the number values. And then on the far right-hand side is the change between the 2021 target and the 2022 target. As I mentioned, Caltrans' approach to setting targets is to look at the trends. So they look at the most recent years and see which direction the trend is going and use that to inform where they anticipate the target to be. And I should make a clarification here that the target, as essentially defined in the federal regulation, isn't how we commonly use the term target as an aspirational where we want to be. The target in the federal rules is where the data shows we anticipate to arrive. So it's essentially that anticipated outcome based on current data. So looking at that last column, we see the number of fatalities. That target is a reduction in fatalities, both in number and in rate. However, for serious injuries, that actually increases, and that's a function of the number of serious injuries has been increasing over the past few years. And since the target is a function of observed data, the target is also an increase. And then on the last measure, it's kind of a combination of the two, combining the fatality change and the serious injury change over those vulnerable users. So as far as next steps, we'll be going to the public works directors at CTAC and then the traffic engineers at SANTAC. They have a combined meeting at the end of next week. And at that time, we will have additional information. What we typically put together is an analysis of what the state trends are. And we also look at what the San Diego region trends, really the county of San Diego with all the incorporated cities, all that data together. Is our region any different or distinct in any measurable way from what the state averages are? And that kind of helps us inform our decisions or our recommendation on if we should continue supporting state targets, or if there's rationale for our region to, if we do have different data, then we should approach things differently. Following that meeting, we do have additional working group meetings in November and December. And then we'll go to policy advisor committees and finally SANDAG board in December and January. As I mentioned, I'll follow up with Allison with additional work that I can share with the members. We can email out that'll have more of that analysis detail. And I really encourage, because this is an important body here, that you interface as you can with your public works directors and or your traffic engineers for any input you may have, any recommendations, thoughts you have on this target setting process and how SANDAG should move forward for the 2022 targets. I put up there my contact information for myself and also Tim Garrett, my associate that's been helping with this project. And with this, I'll pause and happy to take any questions.
Before I move on to, thanks for that presentation, Sam. Before I move on to just questions from the committee, I did want to just mention or ask, is this tied to any funding that we get from the federal government or the state in terms of education programs or awareness programs to help reduce accidents?
That's a good question. So the funding that is tied with this requirement is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP as it's commonly referred to. That is a federal program primarily on transportation. The way the requirement is really the assessment is at the state level. If the state does not make significant progress on at least 4 out of those 5 measures, then the state is required to develop an additional planning document about how they're going to implement the HSIP the following year. And then there also is a removal of some flexibility of that funds, of the HSIP funds. They're not allowed to flex those to other federal pots, which has not been a practice in this state anyway, so it wasn't really a stick that was associated with this one. That's the only funding source. At this point, the state has not made significant progress for 2 years. And so they are in the process of developing that additional planning document, the HSIP implementation plan.
So is this reported for both state highways, freeways, and local streets?
It includes all together. It's not disaggregated into those separate facilities. It's all combined.
All right, great. Thank you again for answering those questions. Any questions from the working group members? All right, not seeing any questions from the working group. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public on this item?
No, no hands raised.
All right. Well, thank you again, Sam. Appreciate it. Next item is item number 7. That's our upcoming meetings and future topics. Just a reminder that our December meeting has been canceled. The next meeting is scheduled for January 13th of next year. We are working on some tentative items. Again, we want to have a follow-up discussion on SB 9 and SB 10, as well as having a HCD pro-housing workshop. I'm also looking for additional discussion topics that TWIG members may want to talk about for the upcoming year. I was like to even perhaps schedule an item on the meeting to perhaps brainstorm a little bit about that in terms of what members would like to really focus on. Some of the things that perhaps could be things that we may want to talk about. Implementation of the regional plans. So how do we make our land use decisions in conjunction with the transportation planning decisions that Sandag's going to be working on? What work are they doing in terms of next steps to make that implementation? What are the planning efforts that we are doing in terms of general plan updates, amendments, land use plans, specific plans, etc. Also looking at TPAs or transportation priority areas that are centered around major transit stops. So especially as a discussion that we had today, a little bit on Sandag's transit hub, the idea and how does that focus on TPAs and vice versa. Those are some of the things that at least I'm thinking about and I've heard, but I would certainly be interested. I'll open it up to the rest of the members to get your thoughts on anything that you would like to talk about for during this upcoming year. Joseph, your hand is up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so just following up on a few more of the bills, if we're going to be talking about SB 9 and 10. So I just wanted to go over those again. So Assembly Bill 491, that's the bill that requires spreading units around a project, affordable units, common entries, common amenities, that type of thing. Assembly Bill 1398, that changes the 6-cycle penalties for housing elements for those of us that do not have a certified housing element. Just heads up that the state changed the penalty. So it's pretty considerable. And we have talked to HCD about this because the 6-cycle did start down here. This bill went into effect in October, but it retros back to January because it applies to the entire 6-cycle. And it's pretty extreme. So if you haven't looked into it, I suggest you do. It really forces rezones to occur much earlier in the cycle. And then for anybody that doesn't have a certified 6-cycle housing element by next April, then all the rezone actions need to occur before HCD is authorized to certify a housing element. So anyway, pretty extreme. And I just wanted to raise that to the whole group. It was a surprise to us and we didn't note it until later. And then the last one is Senate Bill 478, the other one by Senator Weiner. This is the one that talks about I think maybe more for smaller cities that have lower FARs. So this is the one that says that projects with that 3 to 7 unit component has a minimum floor of 1 FAR, and then 8 to 10 units has that minimum floor of 1.25 FAR, which overrides local zoning. So that's a big deal as well. I'd like to talk about that and just see how we're all adjusting to that, and any tips that we can share. If there's any way to get HCD to participate in this January meeting, that would be super helpful.
Great, that is noted. I've written that down, and I'm sure staff has as well. Let's circle back and see what we can do. I'll talk to staff, see if we can either target some or all that in January as well, or if not February, so we can definitely, those sound like timely things to be talking about early on in the year, and we'll see what we can do in terms of specifically getting HCD staff to talk about these bills as well, and any other questions that we have. So
mention one resource, Tate, that we did include the first link. So there's an attachment. It's the last page of your agenda. And the first link under the resources section from the California State Association of Counties, their bulletin had a nice comprehensive list of housing related bills that were passed this cycle. So at least that's a starting point. And I've taken note of the ones that you've mentioned here, Joseph, and yeah, I'll coordinate with Tate, see what we can do.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate it. Rob Eford.
Thanks, Tate. Yeah, I just thought, I don't know maybe what Sandag's already put together or what your individual jurisdictions have put together, but maybe discuss any joint or regional funding opportunities that we have through the Infrastructure Act that was just passed. I know there's sort of short, mid, and long-term opportunities as a part of that, so might be good. I'm still digesting it myself, but I think there might be something of regional importance that we could dig into.
Good suggestion. Any other thoughts, suggestions, things that you would like to talk about this upcoming year? All right. Well, I would just say, one of the things I definitely think infrastructure is important, certainly as we can look to how we fund this regional transportation plan that Sandag is putting together for us, and how do we coordinate with housing, the need for affordable housing, middle income housing, especially, not just, as well as the overall just need for housing within this region, I think is absolutely important. And would certainly like to focus our agendas and a lot of our time on how we as a region can really work together and start implementing these issues and be a resource for one another as we tackle these issues on collectively. So thank you everybody for sharing. Are there any comments from members of the public on this last item? On item 7?
No.
Great. All right. Item 8. Can I believe, or do we need a motion to adjourn, or can we adjourn? All right.
Just you.
All right. Unless there's any other comments from members of the committee, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your year.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.